Bookcase and Coffee presents Buzzing About Romance, a quick shot of romance.
Hi everybody, welcome to A Quick Shot of Romance. I am Leah from Mugs Romance Read on Instagram, and with me this time is Rachel from Read with Rach on Instagram. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
So on this episode, we're doing A Quick Shot of Romance. We are reviewing Owen by Riley Edwards. And here's the synopsis from Goodreads.
Owen Cullen was a dream. Not a dream come true because I'd never dared to dream. He was my wildest fantasy, a hallucination, a delusion. The handsome man who'd saved my life, twice. He was a real-life hero, and what was I? Filth, that was what I was. The daughter of a gangster, the niece of the reigning king of Chicago's underground. I tried my best not to fall in love with Owen. I tried not to mistake his kindness. I tried to remember the lessons of my youth. Love was a weakness. Sex was a weapon. It didn't work. I fell in love. Then my uncle found me, and I ruined everything. Natasha. It was a fake name, one she'd made up on the fly when my team had rescued her from a life worse than death. She had no place to go, so I took her home. It was supposed to be temporary, just until we learned who she was, but the woman proved to be stubborn and kept her secrets buried deep. She'd lived with me for months, and every day the pull of her called to me. I was living a nightmare of my own making. I didn't trust women, especially the ones sleeping in my guest bedroom. I'd fought the good fight. I'd held out for as long as I could. Then all of her secrets came out, but it was too late. I was in too deep. Natasha, the beautiful woman with no last name, was mine, but she had a last name, Pollaski. Everything came crashing down. I was no stranger to the battlefield. I was used to blood, guts, and no glory. What I wasn't accustomed to was the feeling of my heart being torn from my chest. What I was not acquainted with was desperation. Natasha was gone, and I had less than 24 hours to find her, or she'd be gone in a different way. Welcome back to Z-Corps and Special Forces, Operation Alpha. New team, new badass former military heroes. Like the teams that have come before, Owen, Gabe, Miles, Kevin, and Cooper are ready for action, with a little help from Susan Stoker's unparalleled cast of heroes.
Okay, and so this was released January 19th of 2021, so it hasn't been out too long, just about a month. And the tropes in it are forced proximity, alpha hero, a tragic past, and a slow burn. And we rated it on a Steam level of 3. So, what did you think about the book? Did you like the book?
I really liked it a lot. I wasn't sure what to expect because I actually hadn't read the other Z-Corp novels or the special operations ones from Riley. So I figured I'd like it because I like all of Riley's books that I've read. Mm-hmm. But I really loved it, and I finished it in less than a day. I couldn't put it down.
Okay. Yeah, I loved it too. I have not read one of her books that I haven't liked. Like there's some that I like more than others, but her Z-Corps books, Red Team, Gold Team, like they've been outstanding. And like I feel like this core of like guys are a different like elephant than some like her some of her other series. Like they're a lot more, especially Zane. He's the leader of Z-Corps. Mm-hmm. You meet him in Recovering Ivy, Rescuing Ivy. Don't remember one of those R words.
Right.
But he's very, very intense. But I feel like this whole cast of like guys is a different elephant than some of her other heroes.
Yeah, I kind of got that too. And it definitely made me want to go back and read the Red Team and the Gold Team because I have to read Zane's book.
You do. Yeah, definitely start with Red and work your way through those and then Gold, because you get a better understanding of like the camaraderie between all of the guys, like if you start from the beginning and work your way through.
Yeah, I definitely think it could be read as a complete standalone though, because I could tell that those other guys had stories, but that was it. I didn't feel like it was necessary for me going into this one.
You're definitely not missing anything by coming in like this late, and even series to series, like the Red like team as a whole, each book stands really well on itself. But let's get back to Owen specifically. So Natasha And she has another name, but I don't want to give that out just in case we ruin it for anybody. And in her whole transformation, like it says in the blurb how like she has been living in a nightmare and wants to escape from that, but she's almost in like a new nightmare. What do you feel like her biggest transformation was?
I think like finding her voice was definitely the biggest thing. You could tell before she didn't really talk unless maybe she was spoken to,
Hmm.
and she didn't offer opinions even with the guys who rescued her. She just kind of stayed silent, didn't want to give anyone like a reason to be mad at her, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I thought that was the biggest transformation was, finding the strength to like voice her opinion and talk about her thoughts and
Right. And I think just even talking in general, because she says multiple times throughout the book how like women as a whole, like they were not referred to as women, they were referred to as pussy. And it was like it was not heard. Like it had a use and it had one use only, and it was not to do anything else. And I agree, like her coming into her own and like being able to voice like anything, like having an opinion, have a feeling, like just be able to speak those things out loud was a huge thing for her. Because the whole, I'd say probably a good like 25% into the book, like she didn't really have an actual conversation with anybody. Like she spoke words here and there, but a conversation like didn't happen.
No, I would agree. And she ended up being pretty funny.
Yeah, I think so too. Like she definitely like found herself, like in, that was a big thing. Like she needed these people to give her the confidence to become herself. And I mean, she lived a crappy life, like under
Yeah.
her dad and under her uncle. Um and and it was interesting to see that transformation also. So Owen and Natasha, or Nat, she did not like to be called the other name because it gave her that false sense of identity. It was like she was back in that like nightmare. They both have these really strong feelings for each other, but neither one of them feel like they can act on them or should act on them. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because you could kind of tell from the beginning that they both had that attraction there. At
Mm-hmm.
least I thought so. And at first I understood why Nat didn't want to act on it
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever, right? She didn't have a great past with men, didn't
Right.
trust men.
Right.
And then we slowly found out why Owen was more hesitant. Yeah, she was keeping secrets and all of that, but there was definitely more to him avoiding her than just her.
I was actually really surprised when we found out like what his big hangup was, because he's supposed to be this really strong male presence who's like very sure of himself. And when we find out why, like it surprised me because I was like, he's so confident in every
Mhm.
other aspect of everything else. But like this one thing, it's like he took this one person's like opinion and took it to heart and was like, I can never be okay like in that type of relationship ever again. And I was just like, really? Like you have such good relationships with all of the guys that you work with, and like the women like that you're like your friends like are like involved with, but yet
Mhm.
you believed like what she said.
Yeah, and even though you could tell his teammates have constantly been telling him that she was
Mhm.
wrong and that like he was in the right in that situation
Yeah,
a-
exactly. Like
and
I
it took him a long time to get over it.
did. And I mean, but that was something too that was almost different in this book from some of her other books, is like they they didn't actually get together. I mean, they were together from the beginning in a sense, but like they didn't actually like kiss or do anything until probably like 60-70% into the book. And
Yeah.
even then it was like very like surface level in a sense, like physically, before they really got into like the bread and butter of the story. But it was like the slowest buildup I think I've ever read by her.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but there were a couple times I was like, "Man, they still haven't done it, huh?"
Uh-huh. I know, I felt the same way, but there was a lot of background in this book. Not like background setting up for like another book or anything like that, but like a lot of background as to like how Natasha as a person came to be Natasha. Like there just was a lot more talk about who she was before and like almost how well she could hide, but like the whole idea of it opens up with like the fact that her uncle found her and she didn't know how he found her. But then we find out later in the book like he always knew where she was, which was kind of crazy because it's like all of a sudden like he's starting to go after her and it's like why didn't he do that before, which we find out why, but at the same time it's like if he knew all this time, like she had all this like almost false hope that like she was safe.
I know. I thought that was kind of crazy. Like once I thought about it, I was like, I guess that's not surprising. I mean, he's like the leader of Chicago's like biggest crime family. So of course he's got
Plans.
ways to figure things out.
Right.
So I was like, I'm kind of silly for thinking that he didn't know where she was and that it was like that easy for her to get away.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it almost like after the fact, you think it was almost too easy for all of this to happen. But it wasn't for her. And I think that was part of it too. Like she was starting to come into her own and then he finds her and then she kind of like reverts back into this like silence again. And that was a big recurring theme, like over and over. Like she would have big outbursts of like feelings and emotions and words, and like that's when like the bad would come out, and then she would just shut down again and like retreat and become that old person again.
Yeah, I liked that there was like all that background into her past. I think it definitely made me like understand her more. Because I think had it not been there, I would have been like, why won't she talk?
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
I think well, especially the outbursts like that she had in the cabin, like when she was just yelling about what happened to her and never like not understanding like why the guys were having the reactions that they were, but like she was just having like just basically shutting down like in a way where she just spouted all of the terrible things that her family did to her over and over and over again. And that was the only way she could actually get it out. Like if she had sat down and had like a normal conversation with them, like it wouldn't have happened. But the fact that like she snaps and has this emotional like break multiple times too. And that was like, I feel like that was a kind of a recurring theme too. Like she's silent, then she is very loud, and then silent. And it's like that back and forth, like angst of like her personal struggle to figure out like who she is and like finding herself and finding that humor that she's able to push out.
right. And those outbursts, like she was almost like clinical when she was talking about what happened. And I thought it was impressive that Riley was able to write it that way because it very much came off clinical and you could almost like hear Natasha saying it. And then her not understanding why the guys were like upset or angry or whatever. Like sometimes she'd think that it's something she did.
Well, and I think that's part of like the whole fact that she wasn't in the background of everything in the sense where like she was made to do things she didn't want to do, but she was in the background because she was female. Like she was just to be a tool for them. And like I think her biggest thing was like she almost didn't understand why the guys that were protecting her didn't like think this was like a normal reality, like in a way, because like that was the reality that any female that she came in contact with growing up, like that was their life and their reality. Like she was so sheltered, but not in like a good way. Not that being sheltered is ever really a good thing, but like she was sheltered in the sense where like put into this obscene shelter and trying to break out from that after the fact. Okay, so would you recommend this book to other people?
I would definitely recommend it to other people. I loved it.
Yeah, I would too. And we have recommended it to other people already.
We have.
They have devoured it and loved it. Who else would typically like this book?
I would say anyone who's a fan of romantic suspense, military romance, and then the more like broken main characters, because I would say this book had two main characters who had past that they needed to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely any military romance. All of the Riley Edwards Z-Corps Blue Team, like we said, is a spinoff and can be read as a standalone, but the Red Team and the Gold Team, and I don't think there's any overlap between Z-Corps and any of her other series. If I remember correctly, there is overlap with Susan Stoker World with Tex, because he shows up everywhere and is
one of the other teams showed up too.
There's like a green
Doc, maybe.
Oh, from the Susan Stoker team.
Yeah, one of this team from
Rocco. Wasn't it Rocco?
Yeah,
that team. So
yes, it was his.
That's a recurring theme too. Like she has she pulls from the Susan Stoker world a lot. But there's like a core group of them that do that. Where you're always constantly seeing, like, you always see Tex because he's like a super computer genius who can find anyone and do anything on a computer. And then you have that little bit of pulling from one of the, was it a SEAL team? I think it was one of the SEAL teams. I don't know, she has a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, it's one of the SEAL teams from California.
Okay. So if you like this book, you might want to check out Susan Stoker, because like we just said, their worlds overlap. Gemma Westbrook, she has an Alaskan series that's a really good suspense series that you might like. Anna Blakely also dabbles in the Susan Stoker world with her Bravo team. But she also has a Risk series that is very good. And Brittany Saheen, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name.
Me either.
Sorry. But I've heard really good things about her Dublin Nights series. I have not read her yet. Have you?
I have. I love her books. She has a more like military type series too.
Okay. So again, anything that you could find. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this quick shot of romance, Rachel. And if you guys have not checked out Owen by Riley Edwards, check it out.
Find us on Instagram at buzzingaboutromance or on Twitter at buzzingromance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.